Hello everybody, my name is Connor Mobley, and today we'll be talking about the film Boys in the Hood, which, to give a very brief synopsis about this film, is about the real life situations, the real life heartbreak, and the stuff that the major news does not want to talk about or did not want to talk about when this film was released in 1991 by John Singleton. And to quote Ice Cube at the end of the film, they don't know, they don't show, or they don't care what's happening in the hood. So that is a very brief synopsis of the film. There are so many different ways you could take this film and different presentations that have already been done about so many aspects of this film because it is just such a dense movie with so many messages. But today we'll be specifically talking about one character in general, the trauma that he went through, and then the steps in counseling that would hopefully be taken in order to help him. Before we take a look at the character and dive into the case study, I really wanted to take a minute to talk about the cultural considerations that must be taken into account before thinking about treatment plans or symptoms or anything like that. And I think the best way to take a look at a culture is to listen to the music that the culture produces and the messages of that music, because it can show so much about what they think of themselves, what they think of each other, and how that culture views the world. And the three examples that came to mind first were a song from Ice Cube, who starred in the movie, a song from NWA, who had a massive impact on this time period and was one of the best-selling artists, was one of the best-selling groups of that time, and then a song from the Black Panther album from a movie called Black Panther that was released 2 or 3 years ago in 2017, I believe. And all three of these songs really play into the message of the movie, and which is the anger and distrust they have for each other in South Central LA, of the police and other institutions in that time period and in that part of the country, and how that all wraps together into uh, the gang violence and the other violence that happens in that area, which this movie is based on. And so I think really taking a look at these songs and thinking about those messages helps to direct the treatment plan and helps view the symptoms that the character is facing. And now that we've taken his culture into consideration, let's take a look at the character, Trey Styles. When we first meet Trey, he is about 10 years old and he gets into a lot of trouble for fighting in and out of school. And so much trouble, in fact, that his mother actually sends him to be raised by his father in South Central LA. And above all, what the father does is give Trey self-worth that other characters in the movie never had. The scenes of Trey being raised by his father when he's about 10 years old is actually juxtaposed by scenes of other characters being raised by their parents, and how while Trey is being given affirmation and being told of his self-worth, the other characters are told how they're worth less and how they do not have much value. So, and then the next time that we meet Trey, he is about 18 years old and he is considered smart and responsible by his peers and also his authority figures in the community. And this juxtaposition of the two groups, of him and his friend group, is played throughout the movie to show how these characters who do not have the same self-worth as Trey get into gang violence and get into drugs and all sorts of other things that Trey never gets into. And this comes to a head at the end of the movie when Trey witnesses his best friend, Ricky, being murdered in a drive-by. And after this drive-by, Trey displays a lot of different symptoms that correlate to different disorders. And now here are a couple of video clips of Trey after his best friend is murdered. And the first clip is of Trey in a car that is headed to seek revenge for his best friend's death. I would start this video at about 30 seconds and stop it at about 1:50. And notice how Trey is behaving in the car, the sounds that he hears, and also how time appears to possibly be moving a little slower. And then the second clip is of Trey and Doughboy on a porch after that night. And watch for how Trey reacts, different things Doughboy says, and also how Trey just is behaving in general. After you guys watch those clips, I hope you see the same sort of diagnosis that I saw for Trey, which is acute stress disorder. The first reason I think Trey has this disorder is because he directly experienced a traumatic event, which was obviously the murder of his best friend. After this event, he seems to show these different symptoms that I have listed in the slide, which are an altered sense of reality, time slowing down, and audio hallucinations of the gunshots, reoccurrent involuntary distressing memories of the traumatic event, irritable behavior, persistent inability to experience positive emotions, and efforts to avoid external reminders of the event. I think that Trey shows these symptoms in the clips that I showed you guys, and then also throughout different parts of the movie after the event. And with all of that evidence, I believe a diagnosis of acute stress disorder is applicable. After looking at Trey's symptoms and coming to the conclusion of a diagnosis of acute stress disorder, I started to think about Trey's treatment plan and how we would want to help Trey. And the first goal of my treatment plan would be to develop effective coping skills through trauma-focused CBT theory. In a paper by Dr. Friedman that was written in 2019, he talks about how over years and years of study, it has been shown time and time again that trauma-focused CBT is the best way to treat trauma victims and allow them to start the process of leading a healthy life. The next goal that I would have for Trey would be to find a support group for men suffering from ASD. And this is because there's so many different groups that would help him to better understand himself, better understand his symptoms, and allow him or make sure that he does not feel alone. For objectives of his treatment plan, it would be for me to teach him different coping skills for him to use as his symptoms occur, and then also help him to find a support group to fit his needs. So that way we are not just treating the symptoms and the diagnosis, but we are actually treating Trey and helping him to lead a healthier life after these traumatic instances. From those goals and objectives, I then came to think about what interventions I would want to show Trey and teach him so that way he is able to start on the road to recovery and start to better control his symptoms and live a happier life. And the first of my interventions would be journal writing. In Johnson's book over the 1, 2, 3s of treatment planning, he talks a lot about journal writing and how it can help a person to get their feelings out and to start to see them and confront them and accept them. And through accepting their feelings, they're able to start overcoming them and start to control them even more. And then the other intervention that I would want to teach Trey would be deep breathing exercises. In Johnson's book, and also once again in Friedman's article, they both talk a lot about how deep breathing exercises can help someone to control their symptoms, can help to make sure they do not get out of control and that they do not have to live in fear and worry, but through those deep breathing exercises, they're able to control them and move forward with their lives. The next thing that I would like to talk about in terms of diagnoses with Trey is any further future diagnoses that could happen. The first would be that if his acute stress disorder symptoms continue past a month, then according to the DSM-5, his diagnosis would change from ASD to post-traumatic stress disorder. And with this diagnosis change, it would bring up new goals and also new interventions that would be used for Trey, so that way he would be able to hopefully overcome his symptoms in the future and lead a healthy and happier life. And then the other thing that happens for Trey later on in the movie is that at the end of the movie, there is a credit that shows that 2 weeks after the last scene of the movie, Doughboy dies because of another drive-by that happened because of retribution for the people that Doughboy killed in the movie. This could lead to further problems for Trey and also lead to further diagnoses and other things that cannot be known until the incident happened and until we saw Trey and saw symptoms that he would show. So these are two things that must be kept in mind in the future during this treatment plan that we cannot know as of this moment. In conclusion of this presentation over Trey Styles from the movie Boys in the Hood, I think Trey will most likely spend much time recovering from his current issues out of his diagnosis of acute stress disorder. I think the fact that he will lose his best friend in the weeks after this movie's events, and also the fact that he will be moving to college here in about 2 months after this movie ends, will both correlate to more and also new stress put upon Trey, and that will lead to his symptoms prolonging and most likely prolonging to a diagnosis of PTSD, which, as I said before, will bring about new treatment goals and new interventions that will hopefully help Trey to one day lead a healthier and happier life. And the other thing that I concluded from this presentation, also watching this movie, was that Boys in the Hood really shows a lot about the culture of South Central LA. It shows how gang violence has affected so many other people and given so many other people a similar diagnosis to the one that Trey has. And it shows how the level of distrust and the level of anger in that community contributes to this. And this movie and the music that I attached at the beginning show the cry for help and also the hope of one day that children and young adults like Trey do not have to go through these similar situations and have the similar issues associated with themselves. And with that, here are my list of references. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day.